Good afternoon, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to Raising Excellence, one of the most important hours of your day. I'm Michael, the MC for today's adventure, and today's show is Communication, the Art of Easy Communication Skills to Acquire and Apply. So let's meet our other fabulous hosts. We got a full house today. Agnieszka, our psychosomatic illuminator.
Hi, nice to be here.
Willow, our trauma consultant.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here tonight.
Deirdre, our development strategist.
Hi, glad to see you guys.
Dennis, our freedom facilitator.
Hi everybody, how are you doing? Glad to be here.
And our very special guest, Amanda Price.
Hello, everyone.
Amanda, we're talking about communication today, so let's. If our audience didn't remember, you were on just recently, but what's your background in communication and what got you interested in communication?
I'll start with your second question first, Michael. As a teen and even a youngster before that, my personal life and upbringing drew me to pondering the quality of communication that was going on within my family in particular, and developed quite a great desire to improve that because I felt that there was a lot lacking in terms of both being understood as well as being able to express myself effectively. And that led to, over a period of years, finding myself in roles where my communication skills were really at the forefront of the value that I delivered. No matter what the role was, it seemed as if it was the quality of communication that I was able to impart and invite that seemed to push me along. And then over the last few years, I actually stepped away from my corporate career and focused full time on developing my communication skills, particularly in the area of what's called empathic or compassionate communication skills. And that's really, at the end of the day, it's about communication that comes from the heart, and it connects the mind and the heart. And it's about fostering human connection first and enriching relationships, which, when done effectively, typically opens lots and lots of doors for problem solving, conflict mediation and resolution, etc. So that's what I'm doing today. I'm a communication skills trainer and consultant, and glad to be here with you today.
Well, definitely welcome to the show. We've brought the big guns for today's shows.
I'm ready.
So with that said, for those of you that are viewing live, the show live, and if you've got a question, a burning question or a comment, please feel free to get in the chat or get on the Facebook or wherever it is, YouTube, and send us your question or comment, and we'll try and respond. So this is actually show 2 of this topic because 2 weeks ago we touched on this topic before, and essentially just kind of went through the identification awareness that we've got a communication problem, and the communication problems are not getting any easier. In fact, they're getting worse because we're utilizing artificial forms of communication and a lot less natural forms of communication, and that leads to a lot of confusion, misunderstandings, and a lot of other problems. So knowing that this is communication is a dying art and it needs to be revived, what are some simple communication skills that we can bring to the table that will deliver value for our audience? So I just want to go around the room, and I'll start with Amanda.
Michael, one of the easiest and most effective things that I think people can incorporate into their habits of communication are what I call connection requests. And it could be something as simple as, after I'm done expressing my idea, checking in with the other explicitly and saying, how does that land for you? Or tell me what you're thinking, having heard what I just shared with you. And by making that connection request, what you're doing not only is checking in on determining whether or not they received the message that you intended to send, but also you're demonstrating your curiosity and care in terms of where they are coming from and how it landed for them. So it really is this beautiful two-way, it facilitates that two-way dialogue, as opposed to me just spouting things and then hoping it lands well and never really knowing whether the intended message was received or wondering how they were impacted by what I shared with them. So for me, one of the greatest, easiest communication skills that people could really adopt is that, what I call that connection request. Yeah.
Lovely.
So how does that land for you, Michael?
I think that's a really good one. I mean, it brings up some ideas in my mind as far as some other possibilities, but certainly that is a really powerful one. I think kind of setting the stage is certainly necessary, and I think that's also another one that I would suggest is a mindset. A mindset of, I want to successfully communicate with the other person,
Yeah.
and I understand there's a lot of booby traps out there these days, that I've got to be cognizant of. But if I have a mindset that is one in which, we take a lot of the things that we talked about before, I mean, like one being like nourishing versus toxic, just having that nourishing mindset versus a toxic mindset can go a long way. But does anybody else have anything?
Just coming from an understanding, like as a young girl, I learned a lot of fallacious information, like, oh, men won't ever understand you, men are built differently, men don't have the same feelings as women do, so they're not as sensitive, so don't waste your breath communicating honestly. Things like that were maybe not even taught to me by my parents, but just like mentioned here and there, like casually by adults, maybe because they were going through shit, but that has to be unlearned, right? Because, guys, what are men like? Are they really unfeeling monsters?
No.
There are days, but for the most part,
We have feelings too, right? Like sometimes we feel hungry.
That's not what you were supposed to say. You were supposed to melt into a puddle of tears and say, yes, I want to be heard too. No?
I'm thinking...
But see, they don't talk that way, do they?
No.
Sorry, Mantle.
That's okay, Deirdre.
Continue.
In my personal experience, I've noticed that there tends to be a habit of expression of emotions that comes out as anger and frustration. And Michael, I so appreciated you sharing The Art of Communication by Thich Nhat Hanh in the earlier class or session, because what really landed for me was that idea that we recognize others' suffering. And I was able to recognize, even just earlier this week, frustration and anger was expressed, but what I recognized was the suffering underneath. And I said to myself, this person is suffering and I would like to be there for them and I'd like to hear them, because that would help alleviate some of their suffering. And honestly, understanding is the foundation for love and loving communication, that I'm simply able to demonstrate that I'm wanting to understand them, even if I don't intellectually, but I'm there for them from a heart place. from a deep, deep intention of wanting to understand, that alleviates their suffering and it helps dissipate the anger and it allows the true emotions to come out, which is the sadness and the fear. So
Absolutely.
That was beautiful.
So just a quick shout out to our listeners, Pam, Imran, and Adam. Thanks very much for being here. Mwah.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. So Amanda, what was your favorite part out of the book that moved you?
the 6 mantras of loving communication touched me, and to the degree that I'm typing it up and putting it up in my house in several different areas for all of my family to read, to see and read and be reminded of on a regular basis. It touched me so deeply. It was so simple and so heartfelt, and it at the same time it made so much sense. You know, it just it was a mind and heart connection. And I thought to myself, this is how I want to show up in the world, particularly first with myself and with my family. And if I can get that right, then everything else is going to be just fine.
Can you share them with us?
That's right.
Yeah, do you have a meme
that
with
then?
those or something that we can
Well,
maybe share on our page?
I don't have a meme. I can read. I took notes on the 6 of them. I'll have to dig a meme.
Please.
Or maybe Dennis can do that. He's the meme master.
He is the meme master.
Yeah, he is. Could you read them out? Would that be okay?
I would be
If
glad
they're
to,
there.
Deirdre. Yes, thank you. The first is, I am here for you. And let me just preface this by going back to what Michael had said earlier about that quality of intention. You have to have the mindfulness. You have to have taken a breath or two before these words come out of your mouth. Otherwise, they may be taken as false or fallacious or not really caring, just trying to act it. But if you really center yourself first and you're intentional about really meaning it, then the person who's receiving the message will absolutely understand that from you. So again, number 1, I am here for you. Number 2, I know you are there and I am very happy. Just the joy of sharing someone else's presence with them. Number 3, I know you suffer and that is why I am here for you. Number 4, I suffer. Please help. Number 5, this is a happy moment. And then number 6, you are partly right. And that could be in response to somebody who's offering you great praise or deep criticism. In either scenario, it's about the idea of connecting with your humility and recognizing that, yeah, you are, whatever you're giving me is partly right. Connecting in with that honesty. Yeah, that really rocked my world, Michael. Thank you.
My pleasure. It's definitely a book.
I really liked number 4. So that to me is accountability. It's kind of going, yeah, I have some internal issues. I'm struggling with them. I don't have enough knowledge or ability to be able to handle it right now. Could you help me? That, especially to a loving person, that is, you're trusting them then.
Yeah.
And it's also communicating that I'm doing the best that I can in this moment, and I'm asking for your help, you know?
And and that's okay. Well, we all haven't been raised properly. We're all going through something at a different level, varying levels. Thank you. I'm so glad you had them all written out.
We definitely need a meme with those, Dennis. The
Yes,
meme master.
I wrote them down.
Also, hello to Kelly. We're glad you joined us. And I have a question for Amanda. Amanda, how does it work with teenagers? Like, so it's super good to put that up on the wall and, oh, I'm glad you're here. But most of the time teenagers are like, I want you dead. I want you out of my life forever.
Yeah.
So how does that go over with the teenagers?
Agnieszka, I have a teenager. He'll be 16 in June. I have to say that I hold some gratitude that I don't have that quality of relationship with him. He's very, very open with me, and he'll be very clear with his needs and his requests of me. And sometimes they land hard. And so maybe, as you were just describing before, it could feel uncomfortable, but he's very transparent with me. And that's the greatest gift that he could give me, because what I will do is I will meet him where he's at. So, if I were to put these 6 mantras on the wall, he'll pick one of them, and he might make it a play, right? He might play with me.
Yeah.
But I know that in that play, in that sarcasm, in that sort of wink wink, there's a kernel of love and truth and vulnerability. So he might pick something like, I know you're there and I am very happy. I'm sure he could play with that. And if I just looked him in the eyes and said, I know you're there and I'm very happy, I know it would land. So I think because I've had the gift of, I've enjoyed the gift of having a teenager who is very open and transparent, and we have a very open flow of communication. I don't have the same barriers that maybe other families do with their teens. All I can suggest in those situations is whenever a teenager gives you an in, even if it's somewhat sarcastic, grab onto it and don't let it go. And figure out, you might have to try and fail and try again, but when they offer something up, I say, milk it for what it's worth and figure out how to communicate with them on the language that they can understand. Don't ignore them. Don't dismissing it would be, for me, sort of the least life-serving thing you could do for your relationship with your teenager. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
What I love about you go, Willow.
Yeah, I'll be real quick. That reminded me of an article that I read. Of course, I don't have any children, much less teenagers. I don't think I have enough of an attitude myself right now. I don't think I could handle that. But the way that this mother handled speaking to her teenage son, specifically about disrespect, because he had been throwing around some disrespect around the house, just like really not being kind, having the attitude that we expect from some teenagers when they're going through emotional things and they don't have the healthy outlet to talk about it, or they don't know it's there. This mother, she said she waited until she was driving him to school so that there was not a lot of eye contact, that it wasn't like I'm staring you down, allowed him to like not have to look her in the eye if he didn't want to, and alone time to where that they were gonna have to listen to each other. And she started out by apologizing. She apologized because she said that as a parent she doesn't know everything, and she had forgotten to let him know that all of these, like a lot of these strange, aggravated, angry, or upset, irritated feelings can often come from hormones changing. And that's not something that, she had taken the time to describe. And she was like, have you noticed that if I do something that upsets you, it seems to upset you a lot more, and you really want to make it known that that upset you? And like basically offered him what's the word? Not a rationalization, but evidence of like why you might be feeling the way that you're feeling right now. And I understand that sometimes you want to tell me to go to hell, but that's not healthy for our relationship. So if I try to understand that you're having really intense emotions right now and you want to tell me to go to hell, but you're not, would you please try to like respect me so that I can respect you? Like, we need to try to not trigger each other. And I really appreciated how she approached it, because it wasn't, you're being a shitty teenager or you're being a typical teenager and you just need to drop the attitude. I don't know where this is coming from. I raised you better than this. Like, it's all blame. And while, yes, you are responsible for your own actions, if you don't know any better, like, you do need some direction, even if it's self-driven direction.
Willow, what just came up for me that you described is her approach that began with empathy. She was really trying to make some empathic guesses about where he was coming from first, which my hope is allowed him to feel a little bit better understood and heard. And when you open that door, then you get their attention and you make that connection. And leaving out the blame and the judgment and opening it up to both curiosity as well as setting boundaries, right? I expect respect from you, and I want you to expect respect from me, you know, as this beautiful connection of just two simple human beings, right, with the same strengths and flaws, etc. She really, for me, the story that you just shared, she really landed it. She really nailed it, and I'd love to hear what her son's response was to that situation, but I'm guessing it would probably be quite positive.
I think it was, if I remember correctly, it turned out to be like kind of like awkward, where he was like, you know, really? Like, what kind of changes? And then, you know, they started talking about puberty, and he was like, oh no, Mom, I don't want to talk about this. You know, and then she was like,
The moment's gone.
yeah, she was like, we don't talk about that, but you do need to talk about, like, you're gonna have intense emotions. You're gonna have a lot of intense anger over things, or just frustration, or intense joy. Like, emotions are really volatile when your hormones are just raging, and if you don't know what the heck's going on, I mean, women experience this all the time. Imagine right before your period and you're freaking out because you're like, oh my God, am I fat? Do I think I'm fat, but I'm not fat? Do I have issues? Oh my God, I can see the acne on my face. And then you realize 3 days later, it's your period, and you're like, I knew I wasn't a bitch. It's okay.
So when I was coaching teenagers, that's exactly how I would explain it. I would be like, okay, so you know how your mom sometimes gets upset for no reason, like at certain times of the month? Have you ever noticed that? And it'd be like, yeah. I'm like, well, do you know what that's about, how that works? And yeah, you know, it's the whatever, PMS, right? Okay, so what's PMS, right? Well, PMS is when your hormones are jumping up and down. Okay, so did you know that being a teenager from like the age maybe 13, 14 to like 18, it's pretty much like PMS the whole time? And they're like, no.
Yeah.
But yeah.
What I wonder though is
same with menopause. Sorry.
The way sure the way how we perceive teenagers, and you know, okay, they're all like this and they behave like that, and the way we maybe became accustomed to, you know, to label them or to judge them. I wonder if that really is, you know, on the natural stage, or if it has to be like that, or if it's actually like a sign of a widely dysfunctional society and communication and relationships. Because I imagine that there is, you know, societies or let's say even single families or examples where, you know, and even the term teenager itself, that wasn't even a reality until, you know, fairly recently in human history. So that's also, I mean, a topic to be discussed, because that seems to be an invention in itself. And if division and separation of families and of generations, you know, comes into play, then maybe that's even like a part of that. So I just wonder, you know, not
Dennis,
negating that there are changes.
You are correct. There is, so you can see the comparison between independent cultures, like Western cultures, and more kind of family-orientated cultures, like from Mexico, let's say, where Mike lives. And so in independent cultures, the emphasis is that the teenager will rebel, whereas in more family-orientated cultures, I can't remember the word for it, sorry. So there's independent cultures, and then there's conforming cultures. The children more focus on their family. So one is rebelling, one is kind of embracing that their family is unique, and that their parents are getting older, and you know, that whole caringness. So it is a cultural thing. You can see that.
And surely everybody's going through
those
through the physical, you know, changes and transformations at several stages in life, and not to negate that. However, you know, there are certainly different ways of channeling that energy and of expressing that as well. And then I wonder if that is in our society has become somewhat like a sign, of dysfunction and of a lack of, maybe bonding or even resources of how to relate, with others, especially with your close family.
Well, this is what I loved about what Amanda said, what she did with her son. She has the list there, and then she's going to put it around the house. She's, that's a boundary. To me, that's a boundary going, hey, this is how I want to interact in my home. But how you do that is up to you. You're giving him free expression to understand himself in a safe environment. And that is just so valuable.
Well, before the show, or maybe it was at the beginning of the show, someone asked the question, well, what is a leader? I think that was asked of Mike. And to be honest, I zoned out. I don't remember what was said or anything else. I just remember hearing those words. That's the difference between a leader and like a boss or a slave master or like the person who runs the household and makes all of the rules. You're leading by example. You're saying, I want to do this in my life. I found that is the best counter argument to anyone. If they say that they think that guns shouldn't be allowed, for example, I'd be like, okay, I respect that you have that idea. I carry. I feel safer carrying. And these are why I do the things that I do. And very few people have any arguments. They'll be like, oh, well, I don't think this is safe. But, we can have a discussion from there versus just being cut off. Because there are some people who you're like, well, I do this. And they'll immediately jump on this like, well, you're stupid or you're a threat. And like those people I try to stay away from because they're not going to have a rational conversation anyways. But for most rational human beings, they just start to ask questions because I'm not telling them that they have to do anything different. I'm saying I'm doing something different. And that's going to ruffle their feathers because they're like, wait, why are you doing that? Because I'm doing this and I thought I was forced into this. I thought I was making the best decision. I didn't know that there was other options. What are you doing?
I think in response to what Dennis said, John Taylor Gatto, I think, outlines this pretty well in a couple of his books, is the idea of the extended adolescence. And, the reality is that, when children get to the point that they're wanting to become adults, they want to have the opportunity to take on more responsibilities. And that's just something that our society doesn't let them do. They just give them age limits, and they may be much more mature than a 16-year-old when they get to drive a car or something like that. But then at the same time, they could be much more immature and not be necessarily ready to drive a car or some of the other age limit requirements that the state puts out there. But in restricting that, that's, I think, what kind of fires the rebellious spirit, that they have to go above and beyond. They have to be outrageous to essentially get the attention to say, hey, I need more responsibility.
Well, and Michael, I appreciate what you just said, and to Dennis's point as well. I think that the predominant style of parenting these days is much more around authoritarianism. And when you bring up young children in a family where you expect conformity and obedience, then it's very natural when kids get to that age of puberty and thereafter to really want to find their own voices. And that can be difficult for the parents when they haven't been open to that the whole time. There are other parenting styles where from, day one, from the get-go, of course, understanding that, the kids' maturity limits and restrictions, nevertheless, there is that idea of partnership and power with, as opposed to power over. And when you bring children up in that environment, then that initiation of rebellion is it's really not so much an issue. It might pop up here and there, but it's nowhere near that quality that is so stereotyped as, oh, those obnoxious teenagers, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's also like the idea of, if that's a toxic situation, then that toxic situation is one in which we really need to examine at length, to really get back to nourishing, because we do, especially, I think, especially as older adults, when it comes to children, we have the opportunity to not only plant the seed, but water the seed, and kind of encourage them to do the things that they do and take on more responsibilities and understand how to do that in a healthy way. And if we do that properly, then there's only a transition at their speed, because they're just asking, and we're, helping them get the answers.
Yeah, we're facilitators. We're not dictators.
I wanted to circle this back to the planned adolescence. I was trying to not to say planned ossolescence, and then it was coming out of my mouth one way or another. Planned adolescence, or extended adolescence. That's what it was. Now imagine this. I think it throws a wrench or a bag of wrenches into the machine here of how we're supposed to communicate effectively. Imagine if you're having the hormone puberty conversation with your kid, but you're running off of, like, you have a male son and you're telling him female, like, hormones, and like you're using all the handbook for a female. What is not actually knowing what adolescence is, what extended adolescence is, if it's even really a phase that we're supposed to naturally go through? How are we effectively communicating if we don't even know what we're supposed to be communicating at that point? Because if I am correct, the extended adolescence is the idea that, like, children were supposed to go from being children to being like preteen, and then late teenage years was adulthood. You transitioned into adulthood. You picked a job, you kind of set yourself up outside of the family, and then you started, dating and seeking a partner. If that's the way that the brain is and the body is designed to work, and I'm not saying that I know for sure it is, but if that is the case, what are we doing by telling adolescents, oh no, you're just rebelling, or you just have like some crazy hormones going through your body right now, and like your desires and stuff, you just need to like stuff all that in a box and conform to what we're doing, because this is what you're supposed to be. Like, they're turning adults into children. Like, these are almost full-grown adults, and they're treating them as if they are children. What is that doing to the psychology of the brain?
There's so much worse than that. It's so much worse than that, because it doesn't just stop when somebody's 19 or 20. This in our society is a rampant thing, that people are treated like children. People are not taking responsibility for themselves. They're not taking responsibility for their actions, for their words. Oh, you were drunk, you didn't mean it. Oh, that's too bad. Or, oh, like, and what's with men wearing children's clothing? Like, what's up with that? There are men or their children, because I see men with shorts and t-shirts all their life till they're 70, right? And not just for working out, but for every occasion. So I don't know. And I mean, I'm not saying it's different in my own house. I'm just saying, isn't that a little weird that we wear the same clothing as children and then we wear the same clothing as adults in some cases? Of course, I'm wearing this really frilly top, so maybe I am doing the same thing.
I think it depends. I think that specific scenario depends on the situation you're in. But overall, I don't disagree with you. I think that our entire society is, what's the word? Infantilized,
yes.
Infantilized.
The politicians getting
and
off.
Not just, not even just like the sexual nature of what's going on, because that's a whole different level. I'm just talking about in general. Look at what's going on right now. We are being told that we cannot assess our own health.
Or make decisions about it. But we're
Or make
not going to
decisions.
talk about that because we don't want to get banned.
I didn't say I heard someone refer to it the other day as the My Sharona Miley Cyrus. And I loved it. You did the entire show.
But that's hitting, that's hitting home, because it brings up the question: who benefits from that? Who benefits if people are dependent, and if they have kind of like a childlike behavior and depend on, some authority to take care of them and to provide their very basic needs for them for the rest of their lives?
Yeah, that's why learned helplessness is so important. It's a tool. It's a social tool.
Explain.
What you've just been describing, this extended adolescence, is this mindset where people are taught that they have to always consult the experts, that they don't have the wherewithal or the resilience or their own intelligence to be able to think for themselves, to research for themselves, to trust themselves. And so therefore they must rely on others. And then when it comes to points of time in our lives where it becomes really important to start to think for yourself, they can't do it. They have a mindset that they're helpless in the situation, and therefore they have to rely on others that are supposedly providing for them and making the best decisions for them, right? If you can't think for yourself, someone else is going to do your thinking for you.
Yeah, because essentially what we wear is not the issue. How we act is the issue, and what we wear is a result of how we act, as opposed to the other way around. You can wear whatever you want if you stand up and be a real man, real woman, real responsible adult, taking responsibility for your own thoughts and actions and reactions. Wear whatever you want. But it's this advertised adolescence that's sort of shoved, and how you're not supposed to have wrinkles because you're 50, you should wear this cream so you can hide your wrinkles. Like, screw off. Anyway.
Wasn't it marketing that created the actual term adolescence? Dennis, do you know anything about that history?
The term, no, I don't.
I do believe that's in John Taylor Gatto's book.
Yeah.
I believe that's one of the,
It goes earlier than that. It goes to the whole emphasis on childhood being this special time for human beings, instead of it just being they're just small humans who, they can't be treated as adults. That's pretty obvious. But this whole, it needs to be a special time, that was invented.
It would make
in
sense
the
from
Industrial Revolution.
It would make sense even from a marketing standpoint, right? Because like you would basically create a whole set of people that you could market to and that you could sell specifically to.
That's right. Think about it. Kids have special clothes. They don't dress like adults. They have special objects that they manipulate, toys. Whereas if you go to other cultures, let's say like a tribe in Africa, the children are given smaller tools that the adults use. So if a mother's grinding up wheat, the child would have its own device and, practicing with dirt or whatever that they're doing, or maybe the actual trying to grind the wheat. So that's that whole emphasis on specialness in childhood that I was saying that, and yeah, it was marketing.
So one of our listeners had shared an amazing quote by Khalil Gibran, I think, Khalil Gibran, and I want to read it to you because it's like a gift that we got from somebody.
Lovely.
So he says, this is from Imran. He says, "Your children are not your children. They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow. For life goes not backwards, nor tarries with yesterday. You are the boys from which your children are living as arrows, or your children as living arrows are sent forth. The archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and bends you with his might, that his arrows may go swift and far. Yet bending in the archer's hands be for gladness. For even he loves the arrow that flies, so he loves also the bow that is stable. And he is capital, so it's speaking about God, I believe.
Yeah.
So he then, or it, the universe, or like God is expressing him, her, itself through the children that come forward now, as it is expressing itself through us, and that is a communication itself. So we are in that speaking, we are a living communication, a living vibration. And I was gonna touch upon that, because there's different qualities of sound and of vibration of communication, and the one that we hear with our ears is just one level of it, but there are several other levels. So that also comes into play when we can when we really understand the quote that was just read by Agnieszka. Then it is like, what is not communication then? If all of that, if the children that come forward are communication, if we communicate, if we are actually communication and vibration just on different levels, then the maybe the important thing to focus upon is or to extend is our ability to improve our ability and our awareness of that fact that there is communication going on all the time, every time, and of sharpening our senses so that we can perceive more, and that we can also send out more with more awareness, because we already are sending it, so we already are sender at all times. So by increasing our awareness of what and how we're sending, then maybe that is one of the keys to improve communication overall.
All right, I want to get
Beautifully
on.
said.
Oh, yes, lovely. Yeah, I want to get on to our second question, which I think is going to be fun and exciting as well. And I'm really interested in hearing your guys' response, because it is about who has been a good communicator in your experience, and what was it that made them so powerful. So thinking about, in our own experience, who has been a great communicator to you, and what did they do that was so powerful? So does anybody want to start?
So
Go ahead.
I don't really know this person very well. We've only met in person one time. We've had quite a few conversations on autonomy. I'm talking about Lisa. She's been on here before, actually. There is something about, I don't know what it is about the way she communicates. She's very clear. She is able to follow all the points and touch on all of the important points. I think she's good at summarizing into just concise content, I think. But in person, she has this uncanny ability to look at you at the part of the conversation that she, like, I don't know, must know that it impacts you the most, because she was talking about needing to get out of bed, and she just, she was having a hard time, and she said something along the lines of, I was thinking to myself in my mind, is this the kind of person that you want to be? And she looked right at me and pointed at me, and I was just like, I don't know. I don't have an answer to your question. Now I need to think about it. Give me a second, and then she just moved on. But she has a way of drawing you into the conversation and making it very personal, even though the conversation may not have anything to do with you, but she engages you in such a way. I think that is a effective communicator. When you can capture someone's attention, it's incredible.
Yeah.
Well,
All right,
first
who's
one that
next?
came to my mind was my very dear teacher who how can I put it, who 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 lit a fire. The spark was there before, but he lit it up, and he, through him and through his teachings, I was able, and through his presence as well, it was like it's a whole different dimension that came to my awareness of possibilities and of potential that was there from before. But I figure without his input, it would not have, it wouldn't have been revealed to me in that way. And the communication was really only, and today still is, um, maybe the least of it, I think, is through words. So, and that is something really exciting, and you know, just to be led within, and to just experience the communication that is going on, like on an ongoing basis inside of us, like with our self, with our higher self, so to say. And so that was really it, and it has been like an amazing journey to get that kind of spark, that kind of jump starts something that was there before, but it wasn't, running at the speed it could have by itself.
So far, so good. Who's next? Yeah, that is definitely something I've experienced as well. I think it's awesome.
I have to repeat what I just said because apparently I was muted this whole time.
Well, I heard you.
You heard me, but you guys have a different mute button than these guys.
Okay.
So I was just saying that how I love in Autonomy, how when we discuss things, there is a easy, open communication, and we can disagree vehemently and still have a very, very friendly and comfortable conversation. And thanks for letting me know I was muted. I was muted because people were leaving, so.
Okay.
Amanda, you want to go, or Deirdre?
Yeah. Sure. I'm going to amalgamate my experience and share that I was at a communication training intensive retreat a couple of years back, and it was a good 10 days away from my home, and everything was focused on compassionate communication, nonviolent communication. And I left those 10 days coming back to my family with the fullest heart of empathy I've ever had in my life. And I noticed immediately that when I interacted with my children or my partner, my friends, I had such an open heart and had so much more patience, and I had so much more of a willingness to hear the meaning behind what they were, the words, the language that they were using, to get to the core of what was really going on for them. So this non-judgmental curiosity and this real care to want to really just peel back the layers of the onion. And that lasted for months. It was the most beautiful thing. So in terms of the effectiveness of the communication that I experienced at that retreat, it was about, I think for me, being heard so well in what I wanted to express, people giving me the space to share, and the empathic presence and the empathic reflection and guessing of what's most important, the most important things underlying even the words that I was using then, that I was able to then transpose that coming home with all of those around me. So if I were to try to be as succinct as possible, it was people who were willing to give me the space to truly be heard and understood, which I then was able to transfer and translate into my own life thereafter. That was just absolutely, it was nothing like I'd ever experienced in my life. I'd like to be back there.
Can I sign up for the retreat?
I was gonna ask, is there like a sign-up sheet? Do we email?
They're all online now, unfortunately, for this year, but
that's not the same. I'd like to get out and get away from where I'm the space and it all. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's a big mood right now, though.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to get out.
I think I'll do. I walk around my backyard and I'm just like, where's a different area that I can sit and face that I haven't looked at? I'm just like, I haven't faced this way before today. I haven't faced this way this week.
But you're in Australia. Can't you go into the bush and fight the wild animals? That's gotta get the blood rushing in your body.
Where do you think I live? Oh my gosh.
Australia.
Australia.
You say more?
There's nothing, just wilderness out there. There's wilderness.
That's what I'm talking about. Go fight the wilderness. I mean, this is Canada. There are bears, like, you know, a kilometer away from my house. Isn't
Actually,
it like that?
Agnieszka, you live in the most densely populated area for predators in the country, I think.
No, I'm on the island.
Well, no,
it's not that bad. There's only a few grizzlies on this island, several black bears, coyotes, and cougars. It's not a big deal.
That whole area, though, has the highest population density for predators.
Well,
you just have to know how to communicate with them.
I was gonna say, you just have to know how to deal with them.
Do you speak bear?
Yes.
Compassionately.
Everybody speaks bear in this area.
Just bear hug them.
The people that didn't speak bear,
good advice.
the people that didn't speak bear are no longer with us.
You like trying to hug
Again, it's the art of communication. Just with the
Okay. Somebody, what was the question again? Somebody who has
made an
been
impact.
A good communicator in your experience, and what was it that made them such a good communicator?
Oh my gosh.
What about your neighbor who drove over the box in front of your yard?
Oh yeah, your neighbor.
It's perfectly clear.
Did she explain what happened, clear and concisely?
Yeah. Her foot slipped, and she kept thinking that her foot was on the brake, and she kept just going faster on the accelerator. So funny. She didn't just take out the electricity box. It's not like, oh no, she ran it over and it's like crumbled half over. No, she tore it out. She hit it so hard it was gutted out of the ground. That's how much it.
And she kept on driving into the fence on the other side of the yard.
Yeah, it took out my neighbor's garden.
And then she ran away.
Then she kept driving.
That's some kind of message.
I'm not sure if that's an example of good communication.
It's a message, though. There's some kind of message in there.
That's an example of shame, isn't it?
And wasn't that during the podcast? We were podcasting and chatting away, and suddenly Deirdre just went ploop, gone.
That was on Deirdre's first night hosting. And we were already having issues.
Oh yeah, it was too.
You're so lucky.
I
didn't want to do it.
The second day when we actually podcast was when you were like, oh, I'm doing this, live. I'm actually doing it. And then all of a sudden it's like, nope.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything coming to mind then, or you other than the lady?
Yeah, I would.
Okay, go ahead.
Keep in mind, she is like 86 years old. She is quite old and still driving around by herself. So, dang, that girl,
in your
she
yard.
doesn't now. She doesn't now. She got her license got taken off her. So, that's fair enough. Somebody who's inspired me. Gosh, I'd say my mentor. He was just the way that he communicates is so fun. Like, so yeah, he'd be showing examples of how he does therapy sessions with his clients, or even one-to-one. It's just, he's grounded, he's straightforward. Sometimes he can be blunt, and then the other times, if you say something enlightening or something, you've come to terms with something, he'll just throw something really humorous at you, kind of just sideball you with this humor, and it's just it makes I love the humanness in his communication. So it's like art. It's so lovely.
Yeah, well, I'll close it up with, man, I've really been lucky because I've had a lot of good communicators, and I think certainly, kind of growing up and having a career that was kind of men-orientated, military and construction, I had a lot of opportunity to kind of see the man's version of good communication, which in a lot of ways is action speaks louder than words, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's more about action than is anything else. But I think the best communicators were ones that were proactive and essentially kind of took the responsibility for making sure that there was a good line of communication and then defined what kind of communication they wanted, whether it be in the military where, someone like an officer or a senior NCO would say to a squad or something like that, I don't want any bullshit, you know, whatever it is, just tell it to me straight and let's deal with it, that kind of defining what it is or how they're going to set the standard for accurate and truthful information gathering was incredibly good, and it really just the same thing in construction and stuff like that was, I just want to hear what the facts are now. Let's, I'm not even worried about blame or anything else. Let's just, handle the problem. And I think that's, someone that takes a proactive approach can just kind of take down all the barriers that we have such a hard time with by just basically saying these are the rules and this is what I want.
Sorry.
And makes it so much easier for a lot of people to then be comfortable communicating. So in summary, I really appreciate everybody's contribution on this one. I really feel like we covered a lot of different areas, from having fun with communication to, taking more responsibility to, some of the other qualities that I can't seem to remember at the moment. But then in addition, talking about a few of the techniques that are so important and so simple. It really is just about kind of creating the intention to have good communication. It really starts there. So with that said, I guess we got time for a logical fallacy. And then
Oh
we'll
yeah, logical
conclude our
fallacy.
little
Let's see if we
1 hour
can make
session.
that come flawlessly. Yeah, it's on the screen. We did flawlessly. Amazing. So we have the image for the logical fallacy on the screen, and it says, if you let a bully come into your front yard, he will be on your porch the next day, and the day after that he will eat your babies. And the little turtle in the corner says, that escalated quickly.
And we're talking, is this slippery slope? Is that the logical fallacy we're talking about?
I forget which
That
one it
one
is.
thing leads to
I
another,
do
and
have the
essentially
book.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
That's a must-own book.
We have one per person in
Yes.
this house.
Yeah, well, I think this is one of the lessons that we can tell everybody. When people lie to you, don't trust them. And unfortunately, when it comes to television and advertising and all those kind of things,
But he only lied
we're talking
once, and it wasn't that
logical
big
fallacies.
a lie. It's not like he's lying again.
So how would that look in a what's a real example of how that would look in a conversation, let's say? Like it's different to being able to point it out in advertisement to being able to point it out when you're in front of somebody, to be able to judge the quality of their content.
So, are we talking about examples of the slippery slope fallacy?
Yes.
One I heard, particularly when gay marriage was on, like, being on the table of, like, whether it should or shouldn't be allowed. I heard actually quite a few people who had the mentality of, oh, if you allow gays to get married, then all of a sudden people are going to be marrying their dogs and we're going to have bestiality and, all. And I was like, where did you get that? Really? Because I did not, that's not the next logical conclusion that I would come to, but,
So in the book, in the Bad Arguments book, the example that they show is we shouldn't allow people access to the internet. Next thing you know, they'll be frequenting pornographic websites, and soon enough, our entire moral fabric will disintegrate and will be reduced to animals. It's pretty much what you just said.
That was pretty accurate, wasn't it? Unfortunately.
That's not what we use the internet for.
Yeah. Oh my God, he was so right.
Oh no.
This is not a comedy show. This is a serious show about psychology and how we can be better people. Just so you know.
Well,
Now I
Reminder
know
for
why I'm
everybody.
the only one outside in my backyard trying to find a different spot to get a good view of the sky. Because everyone else is online. What?
Looking at porn sites.
Yeah, I'm like, do I need to finish that sentence?
I'm here for you.
Thank you.
Well, the idea with those logical fallacies is just to continue to drip that information into people's minds that these are other ways that people connive and
Just a
and
comment
really kind of
from
build bad arguments, and unfortunately they're there every single day, and those bad arguments are what's propelling a lot of our existence and our experience in society, is because people aren't educating themselves on who the liars are, who they can't trust, and the people that they can. So
just
before we
hang
go-
on. Adam just had a comment that because of what Willow said, he's pretty sure that the Bad Arguments book was illustrated with animals for that reason.
He did just post another comment that says, hotel Wi-Fi is notoriously bad from dinner to midnight at any hotel. Why? Lonely businessmen streaming video. I was gonna say one last comment in regards to the knowing who's a liar, all that. One of the more harder parts is accepting that some people aren't intentionally lying to you, but they're still lying to you, and they're lying to themselves, and sometimes those people are more dangerous than the people who are like, no, I'm gonna lie straight to your face.
Yeah, and also knowing a good argument from a bad argument is certainly useful. And even if we are utilizing bad techniques, because that's all we see day and night, it is certainly something to be cognizant of. Does anybody have any additional information or anything in regard to the content that we provided today or talked about? Is there any additional information or areas that people can look to or look up other than the book? And of course, Art of Communication is certainly another book to recommend. Does anybody have anything else? Any websites?
I just had a shout out. I have a friend who's viewing. She just popped on in the last 10 minutes. Hi, Heather. It's great to have you here tonight.
Hello.
Oh, and thank you to Kelly for the compliment. I appreciate it. Okay, that's it. Are we going to play the outro now?
I guess
Or
so.
should I wait?
Thank you, everybody, for your time and attention. We greatly appreciate it. I hope this was useful to I really enjoyed this. And thank you so much, Amanda, for being the special guest today. Really
Yes,
appreciate
thank
that
you.
additional information.
We love Amanda.
It was my pleasure. I have so much fun with you, and I learned so much. Thank you.
Our pleasure. Our pleasure. Okay, well, that's it. Then I guess we'll say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Signing off.
Bye, everybody.